What is good, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite everything physics related podcast,
Velocitalks.
Hey, I'm with my co-host Alice.
And I'm with my co-host Gio, but you already knew that.
You already knew that though, right?
So today we're bringing it back to one of our chiller segments, more low-key, our book talks. And we're talking about a book that I don't think either of us really thought was going to affect us like this. It kind of really changed the way that I thought about a lot of stuff. What about you?
Kinda, it talked about philosophy in a way, it just really dived into the subject, I feel.
Yeah.
And it kind of brought out an interest that I never really had.
Yeah, so today we're talking about Sophie's World, which is a book about this teenage girl, Sophie, shocking, who lives a pretty normal and boring life until one day she starts getting super weird letters in the mail that ask her, existential questions about, the mystery of life and stuff like that, you know?
It asks her a lot of questions that kind of make her, think about how, where she is in the world. And then until she finds out that the letters are coming from a man called Alberto Knox.
And they're really just a part of some, mysterious philosophy course that he teaches. And Alberto starts to teach her about the history of philosophy through the letters and even in person. And then as they start to become good friends, the book progresses, things get much weirder. Yeah. She and Alberto discover that they're actually characters in a book written by a man named Albert for his daughter Hilda.
Oh my god.
And then they end up escaping the story, being frozen in time, becoming metaphysical beings who are isolated from the rest of the story and living in their own time. So, pretty wild stuff to discuss today.
Mouthful. Oh my god.
Yeah. So this book talks a lot about paradigm shifts. Ooh, yes. So, Gio, you want to start by telling them what that is?
So, for those of you who don't know, a paradigm shift is when we as a society kind of shift the way that we think about a certain subject. And this can be with science, it can be with politics, it can be with literally anything. Even just create literally anything you can think of, there can be a paradigm shift and that can kind of change. It's just a big change in the way that the subject is approached.
So one paradigm shift that we were thinking a lot about that was discussed in this book was the shift from rationalist thinking to enlightenment thinking.
But for those who don't really know what that is, they're both schools of philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's just ways of thinking.
Philosophers who believed in rationalism believe that human reason is the only way to think and that it's all about objectivity. So if there's no reason to question something, why should you? It's kind of just about taking evidence that you observe and forming a point from that. And then one quote from chapter 4 that kind of talks about this says, a rationalist is someone who believes that human reason is the primary source of our knowledge of the world.
Yeah, rationalists just kind of took things with the simplest explanation they could go with. But
yeah, just what it is.
The shift from rationalism to enlightenment was we saw that when Sophie actually left her book and then escaped to the real world and she that's when she was able to observe things in the real world and observe Hild and how she lived her life. But basically she takes an enlightenment point of view when she ascends into this new world, because enlightenment is kind of when philosopher Kant put it in a really good way, where he said we can only know what the world is for me, and he kind of thought that there were two different worlds, the one that we observed and then the one that we actually lived in. And so what he is saying is that we can't actually know everything about our world because we don't have a perfect perspective. But then, and Sophie kind of adopted those, she really just had to adopt that kind of thinking when she left the book.
Yeah, when she was enlightened, she was thinking, she realized that she had been seeing it from a different perspective than she was now, and it is always changing, and humans are not perfect. And another example of this in science is the shift from geocentric thinking to heliocentric thinking. So when people thought that the Earth was the center of the universe, they thought, why question Aristotle? Exactly. He has the evidence, he has the reasoning.
They just saw the sun rotating the Earth, and they kind of and they saw all the planets rotating.
Yeah, they thought, we have the evidence, why not?
Evidence from that.
Why wouldn't it be true? But then people started to realize that, humans might not be the center of the universe, there are different perspectives, and we discovered that the sun is actually the center of our universe instead.
That's a really good example of a paradigm shift.
Yeah,
and especially because it was really such a big shift since it took so long for the research to be actually approved by the churches. Yeah. And that was just the biggest shift.
Yeah, and you could say that Sophie's point of view shifting is also an example of a paradigm shift, because her paradigm before was that she was living as a normal girl in middle school or whatever. Yeah. And then her paradigm shift was realizing that she was just a character in a book in somebody else's story. So they all kind of tie back together, these principles of rationalism, enlightenment, these scientific ideas, and Sophie's life.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, you could have. So I think this book was really fun to read.
I think it was really amazing.
And really interesting. And
it was really eye-opening, I feel.
Think about the world.
Anyways, so guys, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button.
Smash that like button, smash that subscribe
button. And you better ring that bell, boy.
And
you already know.
Leave an earth emoji in the comments if you made it this far. Thanks for watching, Velocitalkers. Boom. Alice and Gio out.